I am Bilal Morris, and this is Belizean Legends. As Belizeans, we have a great history of achievement. We are fortunate to witness some magnificent athletic performances. We've been privileged to enjoy great musical concerts from extraordinary musical artists. As a nation, we have struggled politically, but also made great progress. Culturally, we continue to evolve as a society. Where were you when some of these incredible moments occurred? Belizean Legends will transcend you back into time to relive some of these spectacular events and offer some behind-the-scenes perspective on the untold stories, as well as updating you on the individual lives featured in this series.
Husband and wife team that played softball, that rose to the greatest levels in Belizean softball. The legendary coach Raymond Lashley and the legendary softball player Gretel Lashley.
I became involved with gun riding in the 60s after the hurricane. I stayed with them until 71. In 66 I went to Kyle. There as a pharmacist I spent 2.5 years there. I found my team by name as Park. When I came back in 68, I was contacted by Collect Gill, who asked me to coach around him.
Then you proceeded to move on as a coach that worked under Collect Gill to one of the most phenomenal things, coaching the 1974 national selection that went to the Central American and Caribbean Games and won the first gold medal for the country of Belize ever in the whole history of sports in this country. Tell us about that game.
Yeah, to tell you about a game, it was something unusual for us because we have never played against the Central American team. We knew the Caribbean teams. The first game we played, we lost that game. We had as usual, we have a postmortem, and the young lady who I felt was responsible for our loss was told that she has to change her approach to the game, and she told me that this is the way she do it, and she do it all the time like that. So I didn't make a big thing of it. She went back to the play, and the same mistake happened, and she was removed. From there on, the Belize team went on to win all the games that they played. What happened is that I think since Isolene Heath decided that she didn't want to pitch anymore. But I did a very unusual thing. It's not common, I don't think it's ever been done in softball. That we changed to Lena Lewis, and she went on to pitch 11 games straight, losing none.
Give us some of the highlights of that game if you can. What was the strategy that coaches like you were using along with your assistants at the time? And what was that strategy in gaining that victory, in defeating one team after the other, and so on? What was the strategy that was used?
Well, I'm really an unorthodox coach. I use my gut feeling. I don't do things that I'm supposed to do because I think the element of surprise is very important to the team. I also bank on the fact that if you can't beat something that I'm doing, then they're going to get it all day. Tomorrow, next day, the following day, until they learn to beat it. And that was the strategy. If they couldn't beat the pitcher, she was going to pitch. If she had to pitch 4 more games, it would have been the same thing.
Very much. And Ms. Gretel, as you looked at how your husband rose to such high acclaim as a coach in coaching this incredible game softball, as a player yourself, how did the encounter between you and him occurred, and tell us also some highlights of your softball career and how it started?
I also started after Hurricane happened. And practicing at Yabra with under Mr. Collect Gill, Roy Young, Joe Smith, Brokan Miller, and Raymond Lashley. And gradually, we were the junior teams. We were the junior team. They had a junior senior and a junior done right junior. So we always had competition. Should any of the senior players not able to come in, somebody from the junior team steps in and take their position. And I think some of them felt threatened the way how they saw us practicing, because we practiced seriously. And during the competitions, we got on well with everybody, and we come together. I think that was one of the things that Kalikofen really made sure that all of us did. We had functions together, we moved around together, and that clannishness assisted the team in motivating us to do better each time we played. We had serious competitions with Milo and the likes with Unity was before us. Alright, so during that time we played top softball, and we were serious because each of us wanted to win. And that's what kept Done Right going for the amount of years that they have been doing that. When the senior girls steps out, the juniors takes their place, and the juniors had to perform properly to be able to stay in the game. And that's what we did under the able management of the manager.
What was your area, your best area? I remember Brenda Johnson told me this morning that she was most phenomenal as a catcher, working under the incredible Consuelo Dougal and the coaching of Collect Gill. What was the areas that you played, Ms. Gretel, in terms of the rising, helping the Belize rose to that level of national fame in softball?
I was a good runner, and Mr. Gill placed me in center field. And I was able to track the ball right and left. I remember one day, one of the girls, I nearly think it's Rita Burgess, hit the ball so hard in the outfield. And I tracked that ball. The right field was trying to get the ball, but I realized that the ball was going over her head. And I tracked that ball and I caught that ball. And with that we were able to beat her. Because I was able to move right and left with speed, I was able to conquer that position. And another thing I could have done was bunt. I was one of the best bunters. And so I ended up being the leader person for the Done Right softball team. And through that and my stolen base, because I have been able to steal a lot of bases, I won several competitions and for the stolen base champion. And I was able to do that too. So all around, I was fairly good. I hit the ball fairly well, hitting home runs and all that. So I have been able to do all that, and probably more because we were dedicated people. Yeah. I sacrifice during the games when I'm working because I'm a nurse, and the shift I take is the shift that would allow me to play ball 4 and 6 o'clock in the evening. So that was my time, and that's what I sacrificed. And as soon as I finished the ball game, I had to go back and work until about 8 o'clock. So all that happened in my era.
Mr. Lashley, coming back to you, the 1974 Central American and Caribbean Games was a highlight in your career as a coach. Within that national selection that went to play, how would you have rated those players in terms of conditioning and stuff like that? And in terms of the pitching of Linda Lewis, what is it that made her stood out in that game as a pitcher?
I think all the players on that 1974 team were in good shape. And like my wife had just told her, they practice hard, so they got the act together. I think in the case of Linda Lewis, she was just too fast for them and the ball was moving from the inside to the outside. So they just couldn't catch up with it.
Yes. And they describe Bonnie Ramdas and them, they describe the level of conditioning that you put them through, you and your coaching team, in terms of getting them ready for a game like that. What was those training like?
Like I told you before, those kids work hard. I mean, we used to practice at least 1.5 hours, and they know that for that 1.5 hours, all we want from me is some ball. They really put themselves to the wheel, and because of that, they were able to play back-to-back games and be successful.
Yes. You described the pitching. I want you to really tell me what was going on between the pitchers of Consuelo Dougal, Isolene Heath, Margaret Usher, Peters, and all these legendary pitchers, Linda Lewis, and so on. You described coaching as a science, and you were telling me about the amount of feet in which players are pitchers pitch from. In terms of those 5 dynamic pitchers, how were they different?
Well, to start with, the 8 feet, and the next 4 they were throwing from 40 feet. And if you're a softball player or a baseball player, 2 feet is a whole heap of difference. But I think Dougal would have pitched from 40 feet anyway, because she had that attitude that she could do. To me, the person who probably would have been one of the best pitchers would have been Isolene Heath, but she just didn't want to pitch. Isolene Heath had all the attributes of a good pitcher. She was tall, she was left-handed, the ball moved from right to left, left to right. Now the young lady, Margaret Usher, is something similar to Dougal. Only that she was more craftier. She could get the ball to do what she wanted the ball to do. And she was a very good fielder. I think it's difficult to classify any of the 4 pitchers there and put them in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 thing, right? I have never tried that, I never will. So they were the 4 best pitchers this country I've seen. When you look at their styles though, I used to love to see Isolene Heath when she flips the ball and pitch in that style. What are the different styles that these pitchers between Dougal, Isolene Heath, Margaret Usher, Linda Reyes for that matter, and Linda Lewis? Isolene Heath used the slingshot method, right? Right.
What is the difference between all these styles, and what these styles made those pitchers good?
Like I said, the slingshot comes from up top, over the head. The rest of pitchers all pitch with one revolution before delivery. And that might be deceptive, but personally I love to see the slingshot.
It was a beautiful style indeed. I used to just go watch Isolene Heath just do that. It was so beautiful. And Consuelo Dougal had a dynamic pitching style. Collect Gill described a scene where about 10,000 fans or so was at the Cast Games. Dougal looked to the middle field. The crowd began to chant. Sanchez, the Jamaican coach, went for his best batter. This was a 1969 game, right? Cast Games.
Okay.
Do you remember that moment?
My wife was playing that. You should remember it.
Ms. Gretel, would you mind giving us some highlights of that particular scene that Collect Gill wrote about?
I don't really remember that.
Yes, he said, and then he looked at Dougal looked midfield, and the crowd began to chant. The pitching was 2 balls, 2 strikes, or two strikes, or something like 1 ball. So Sanchez went for his best batter, and Dougal fired a shot that struck out the player and the Belizean crowd, the game was won and the Belizeans ran on the field. I mean, just reading that brings chills over you, you know, to see the dynamism of Dougal. But then he went on to say Margaret Usher became the best pitcher in his book, and then he break down the statistics of why. Well, Mr. Lashley, tell us about the great Collect Gill. What made him a very brilliant coach?
Collect Gill was probably the most dedicated softball pitcher I remember. He was my mentor. But the thing with him is that he thought out the game. And he was very orthodox, unlike me. He was not a coach who would take a lot of chances. Therefore, when he trained his team to execute certain plays that he know he's going to do. But what was more in his favor than anything is that he was able to garner the respect of all the players that are around him. And you could ask them to do anything and they will try their best to do it.
Yes. The other legendary coach, Charles Solis, another icon like yourself and Collect Gill. What made Charles Solis stand out as an incredible coach?
Charles again was very patient, dedicated, hard-working individual. And he like Collect were very orthodox in what they do. They don't take a lot of chances, they don't do anything that would be referred to as unorthodox. So that you would find that they are able to stay within the game. Unlike me, I was a gambler. I played with my gut feeling. And I mostly felt that some ball should have some excitement. And people are not to be able to read the play you're going to make even before you execute it.
Very much so. Ms. Gretel, why do you think that the softballers of today are not playing with that sense of discipline and passion and dedication that you all played softball at that time that took Belize to the highest level of sports ever in the international arena? Why do you think that they are not at that level?
I think that maybe they want to be, but they have a lot of distractions at their school, in their private homes, wherever they go. And what they need to do is be dedicated players, practice hard. They only give you like 75%. Why they're only back to 25, I don't know. So they need to realize that for you to excel in whatever you do, you need to put in the practice and work hard and be dedicated to the team and to your players and managers and coaches, because they are the ones that will guide you. You need to know your rules, even though the coach and the managers, they know their rules, but you need to know some of it too. Not only go by what you see or every day, because there are some plays that you have never seen, you never heard of, but you when you read in the book, in the rule book, you find out that yes, this can happen, that can happen, and should it happen, I know that I can do this and do that.
The 1979 game in which Belize beat the United States. Give me some highlights of that game, and why do you think Belize was able to beat the greatest softball team in the entire world?
Well, most of the time, we take it better. Something like a joke, right? Because I felt that the manager felt that Belize was just a little small country and a small team, so he decided to put in some of his extra players. But when it came down to the 14th inning, I realized that there's a problem here. When he started bringing in the senior players, all girls, especially Margaret Usher, had already been coming our ears. We have led them for 4, we can lead them for 5. We have led them for 5, we can lead them for 6. We have led them for 6, we can lead them for 7. And they were not able to catch them.
That game went 2-1. Glenda Ellis, I understand, hit that shot that the bases were loaded and people like Dorit Martinez and others went in and scored a run, huh? Yes, a very phenomenal time. What advice do you have for these young softballers that are coming up today? What advice do you have for them?
My advice is to try and dedicate themselves to the sport, but they have got to be prepared to put in the work. Over the last 13 years, I've been coaching a team by the name of BTL, and every year they have a national. Our team has won 10 of that 13 national. The simple reason is because we have adapted most of the strategies I've done right. We are a closer team. If you don't see one another, we got to make sure and give a call and so on. So the closeness is important. You've got to be close and you've got to put in the work.
I would like that everybody would try and get together and see how they could improve on softball. As softball seems to be declining in this country. And without the dedication of the players and without the hard work with the managers and coaches, I don't see how we will ever reach that standard if we don't decide to buckle our shoes, buckle our belt, strap our shoes, and get out there and run and play like we used to do.
I want again to thank you very much for giving me that time to highlight those two very important eras, 1974 Central American Games and the 1979 Pan American Games, in which the Belizean softball team took Belize.
Just to add to that,
yes.
They were 79 and 83.
1983 also.
One time they won the bronze in the Pan American Games, which at that time was the highest level of softball in this part of the world.
Mr. Raymond Lashley, the legendary Belize softball coach that took Belize to the 1974 and 1979 games.